My name is Heidi Crnkovic. I'm the 4-H ag agent for Otero County. We hope that you've enjoyed the previous 2 videos in which Sid has given us some references on selecting a prospect with special interest to the 4-H, futurity and maturity. And then our second video, which dealt with round penning your horse. We wanted to go ahead and build on that round penning video with some groundwork. One of the things that I found really helps me when I get in the saddle with my horses is to do some background work to get them really handling on the ground, respecting you on the ground, moving off of pressure. And then one of my favorite things to really teach them before I get on them is whoa. There are a lot of people that don't maybe do so much background work on a horse before they get on them. But I found that just for me, there are a lot of really good professional trainers in this area. I just do this for fun. I did it as a 4-H'er, and I enjoy working with some of these young horses now. So it's really helped me to get in the saddle and have a horse that already knows a little bit, already is comfortable with me and knows a little bit about what I'm asking him to do. So this horse, you'll notice some things are a little bit different about him than the horse that Sid has been showing us in the previous 2 videos. This is actually a 3-year-old little colt. He's got about 30 days on him now. It was kind of a slower start for him because he wasn't super halter broke, and he's a little bit more of a fractious-minded colt than the one that Sid's been working with. Still a really neat animal. We'll go ahead and show you a front view of him. Some notable differences in this horse, and the reason that he wasn't started as a 2-year-old is because he's just been a more immature animal. He was smaller as a 2-year-old. You can kind of tell he's a lighter built, narrower made horse. Even though he's a full year older than the colt that Sid's been showing us, he still lacks some of that substance and bone that other horse has. Now, this doesn't mean he's not going to go on to be a neat horse. There's some things that I really, really like about him. He's certainly an athlete. He goes back to Smart Chicolina. His mom's a daughter of Dealing Dirty. And then his dad is a son of Suerte Fuerte, a horse that was in the Cruces area for a while that Josh Armstrong showed. So we really like this colt. It was very important to go ahead and get some of this work done with him. So I'll go ahead and show you a couple things that I do with my horses before I start riding them under saddle. One of the things you'll notice, I do have a rope halter on this horse. This is a tool that I prefer to use versus a stable halter, a flat nylon or a flat leather halter. You can certainly use one of those stable halters with your horses, but in general, that rolled rope with the knots does give you a better reaction to that horse. They're a little bit more sensitive to it. So when I get started, one of the very first things that I work these horses on is just desensitizing them. You want to be able to touch them all over. This colt's pretty good now. I wish you could have seen him about a month and a half ago when I got him. He was pretty fractious, wouldn't stand still. He'd kick you pretty good when you get back by this hind end. So just getting him used to people and human touch. On some of these weanlings and yearlings that haven't had their feet done, it's pretty important that you teach them how to mess with their feet so you can get that farrier out there, and your farrier will certainly appreciate you doing some of that work. So once I get them to where they're a little bit more comfortable with human touch, I'll go ahead and we've already hopefully round penned them at this point, so they've learned a little bit about how to move off pressure this way. But again, we'll start asking them to move off pressure on a lunge line or on a lead rope. And so you guys are going to use some of these same principles. He's not really used to me talking while I'm working him on the ground. But you're going to utilize some of these same principles that you're using when you're working them off of the lead line or off of the lunge line. You want to be behind that shoulder, driving them forward if you want them moving forward. Versus if you get more towards their head, you're going to go ahead and cause them to stop. So one of the things that I really like that this colt does now for me, and granted this wasn't the case all along, is that he keeps that eye on me. He's soft in the face. He's kind of got his head soft. He's not pulling against that lunge line. Some things that I'll do is I'll go ahead and bump that lunge line a little bit to get his attention. But we can go ahead and push him up into a trot. And again, the same principles apply here. We want this horse moving forward. You can really learn a lot about body placement and where you need to be when you're working a horse in regards to their body by working them in the round pen and free lunging them. But The one thing that I do like about this is when you go to start him under saddle, whoa, it's always useful to be able to, go ahead and ask that horse to trot a couple circles, maybe once you have that saddle on. I went from riding some horses in school and having a really nice facility to moving somewhere where we didn't have any round pens. We had a couple pens, but there were usually some crippled cows in them. So when you went to riding these horses, it was mostly out in the pasture. And I have a lot of respect for those guys that'll just get on one, but I can tell you I'm not one of those guys. So this horse, I'm being a little lazy today. So I'll spank him on the butt to get him moving, go ahead and drive him forward a little bit. But again, the same thing applies here. You want that ear on you. You want him soft, not pulling on that lunge line. And sometimes you'll have to really drive that horse forward and kind of walk some bigger circles with him to really get him moving forward. Now, one of the things when I talk about whoa, see, he knows what I'm saying. That's a good boy. So when I teach a horse whoa, I'll start working with them in the round pen. And like you saw when Sid was working that Colt and he's free lunging him, eventually that horse gets to a point where they're licking their lips and they're really asking to stop. So once they get to that point and they're really responding to me coming off of their body, that's when I start utilizing that verbal cue whoa. I'm not a huge verbal cue person. You'll see some people who will tell their horse walk, trot, they'll tell him side pass. There's a lot of verbal cues and they're really cool, but I want my horse listening to my body position and paying attention to me and where I'm at. So once I get that horse responding in the round pen and learning that when I back off, he gets to stop and take a break, I'll start utilizing that cue of whoa. So the same thing applies here. When I go and I ask this horse to move off at a trot, he loves the W word. I don't mean Whataburger. What I mean is asking him to stop. So the second that I go ahead and I ask that horse, whoa, you see he gathers that hind end up underneath him. Now, one thing that I want to key on here is that some of these horses want to be in your lap. Some of them want to be away from you, so it's really good to do this groundwork to teach them that they can trust you. Some of them, they get scared and they're going to plow right over the top of you, or they're going to be disrespectful and step on you, bite you, whatever. This Colt is one of these that will run over the top of you, and I figured that out pretty quick. So a big part of what I do with horses like this is I want them, and you can see he wants in my bubble, I want them to respect my space. Get out of my lap. This isn't a lap dog. He's a nice animal and I want him to like me, and I want to like him. But this Colt probably weighs not a whole lot, about 950 pounds, but a heck of a lot more than I do. And let me tell you what, it hurts when they step on you. So teach those horses to respect your boundaries. So as you're teaching them on the lunge line, they're gradually going to pick up on some of those cues. They're learning to respond to that halter. You're bouncing them off the end of that halter. You can go ahead and use some intermittent tugging. Getting in a tug of war with a horse typically doesn't work. They outweigh you, and that constant pressure can sometimes pressure them into panicking. So typically you'll want to do more of a bumping type movement. So you can see on this horse, not only when I pull him forward does he come forward, but as soon as I stop him, he's going to back up. And different people, different trainers will have different methods of teaching some of these ground manners. They'll have specific things that you're going to look for, but guys, the purpose of doing this groundwork is I want to ride this horse. And if you guys have a futurity horse, we hope that you're planning on riding him too. So if you can't get him after a couple weeks to the point where you can think about getting on him, I would highly recommend finding a trainer to work with. Although with the 4-H Futurity program, you cannot have a trainer ride your horse, you can certainly get professional advice. I seek a lot of professional advice as I'm working with horses, just trying to improve and educate myself. So once I've got him to the point where he does kind of respect my space, you see I can move his front end around his hind end, and I can move his hind end around his front end. he understands whether I'm touching him or whether I'm not, that he needs to move away from that pressure. And what we do to one side, as Sid has told you in previous videos, we want to go ahead and do to the other side. And I'll go ahead and I'll lay hands on this horse and start teaching him to move off pressure kind of where my leg would be. And if you can see in this video, we're applying pressure back here, almost to where that back cinch would be. Some of these horses that aren't real used to being handled, they'll try to kick you, so make sure that they're desensitized enough to that pressure that you're gonna be safe there. So as we've taught this horse to move his feet around, he gives to pressure both directions. One other final thing that I do kind of work him on, he knows whoa, obviously. He's working on the lunge line. He already gives his head on the lunge line, but I'll do some stuff and I'll ask him, hey, go ahead and give me your face this way. And I'll turn around and I'll ask him the other way. He already knows what I'm looking for. But I'll ask him to give me his face this way. And like I said, our intent here is to have a horse that we can get on and ride. I'll sack him out too, you know. You saw that I kind of spanked him a little bit to get him to move. You know, we'll throw the lead rope over him, cinch him up a little bit, see what he thinks. Just mess with him. And you know, the cool thing about some of this groundwork is that you can do a lot of it when your horse is just in the stall. Part of how I kind of get them broke on the ground is even when I don't have time to take them in the round pen and really work with them. And sometimes with these young horses, you're gonna have to lunge them down for 20, 30 minutes even sometimes before you can get them quiet and focused. But your goal here, like I said, is to have a horse that respects your space, responds to pressure, watches you, knows where you are, isn't gonna step on you. And like I said, that really big deal for me that I love to put on these horses is whoa. And I can tell you, once you get that whoa on them, on the ground, as soon as you get on them under saddle, you say that word, they know it and they remember it. And it's good to have some of these basics on them anytime that you're in a stressful situation or new situation, because they will transfer and they will lead you towards better success in the future. Thank you.